Hi, thank you guys for joining our service dog handler chat. This is actually through the Crazy2Calm Canine Coaches. And you all know me, Penny Beeman with Uber Positive Love. Just a couple of ground rules. I know most people here already know them, but we just ask that you stay muted unless you've been given the floor, simply because we're trying to avoid flashes. If there's a background noise and the screen flashes from me to you, people with seizures can easily be triggered by that. So we just ask to stay muted. You can always raise your hand or type a message in the chat screen. There's enough of us here that are monitoring that chat screen as well. So simple, easy, stay muted. Please do feel free to interrupt us with questions and comments. Just do it politely, either in the chat screen or with a raised hand. My foster dog just barked for like the 4th time in 2 weeks. And the second bark was a whisper, so that was a good girl, Roz. She hasn't hardly ever barked, but for the first time she's seeing somebody after dark outside. So, but she quieted right down, so that's awesome. All right, and so with that, our special guest tonight, Rosie, come here, babies. Our special guest tonight is somebody that I have chatted with on a few different Facebook groups and had some fun. We have a lot of things in common, we're finding. So I wanted her to join us tonight to talk about my May theme myths and maybes, kind of different things in the dog training. And she's going to be joining us for another handler chat as well. So for this one, we're going to focus mainly on just training per se, whether it's pet dog, service dog, doesn't matter, because it's all training area. And then the next one will focus more on service dog world stuff. And so with that, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself a little bit better. Everyone else here knows everybody, so we're not going to do introductions beyond that. So go ahead, Pine.
Hi, my name's Pine Irwin, and that's IRWIN, like Steve Irwin, but no relation, sadly. I'm a multi-certified trainer with the CCPDT, the Fear Free, IAABC, the PPG, and a few others whose letters I'm going to say and get all tongue-tied. So I am a behavior specialist, and so I work primarily with behavior concerns. I'm also, I study canine behavior. Amongst other animal behaviors, I do train horses and a few other species as well. And I am a service dog handler as well. I have PTSD and ADHD, which is like a really potent combination of mental health problems. And so I am familiar with service dog handling. I've also trained service dogs for other people. And so if you're not familiar with me, my company is Irwin Dog Training / Constant Canine Consulting. And I do a lot of graphic work, like a ton of it. And if I could get paid full time to do just that and make a really good living, I would totally do it. So you might have seen some of my stuff shared. I know Penny shared some of my graphics and things like that about talking about behavior. I am really stoked to be here. So if I sound like I'm speaking at the speed of light, is because I've had a lot of caffeine and I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I have days like that too. And I'm just trying to stay muted because she barked a few more times. But
you're under attack. You don't know.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, in her defense, this is probably the latest we've been at work, and she's usually home in bed by now. So, except for when we had the rescue dog here last week, or the temporary foster dog that we had for a night that barked at us all night long. So no matter what, if she was in the room with us, not in the room with us, she barked. She just barked and barked and barked. But yeah, so that's where my service dog in training that I'm currently housing was barking. Ross, come on, babies. Now she's barking to get the cookies. Anyways, so with that, the first myth we kind of wanted to talk about tonight is, Rosie, All right. So the first myth that we wanted to talk about is the myth that punishment is required for a dog to know what to do. And I'm going to mute and fix her for a moment so she'll stop barking.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I will just let Penny go deal with that, oh, dogs. So the myth is that punishment is required for a dog to know what to do. More importantly, I think the way people most often present that is they say that punishment is required for the dog to know what not to do, right? They have to know when they made a mistake. They have to know when, they mess up. And so in training in anything, but in particularly in service dogs, that's kind of a catch-22. So what I like to remind people is that dogs can not do two things at the same time. They can either be working towards or away from something. They can't do both at the same time. So if the myth is that punishment is required for the dog to know what not to do, the question is, well, what was the dog supposed to be doing? And why did we not set the dog up to succeed in doing that ahead of time? And when we're talking about punishment, we're going to be specifically addressing like physical punishment, forceful punishment that has a punitive, painful connotation, etc. We're not going to be talking about unintended punishment of like our dog bolts off on a leash and we're holding onto the leash and they hit the end of it and things like that. That's clinically speaking, from a scientific perspective, it is considered a punishment, but it's not something that we've intentionally added to the scenario. It's just a byproduct of behavior. It's a consequence of behavior. It's a totally separate thing. So if I need my dog to know that in X scenario, I need Y behavior, and they don't perform Y behavior, the classic argument is that we want to punish them for not performing Y behavior, right? Well, why didn't they perform Y behavior? So let's draw all of that back. We need to come back all the way. Dr. Jesus Morales Ruiz, who I strongly encourage anyone who gets an opportunity to study with him or to take a class from him or to go attend a conference where he's lecturing, do it. He's an incredible man. He's a genius when it comes to understanding behavioral psychology. He teaches at Texas A&M. He's a professor there, but he's often at Clicker Expo and a few other places. He said very succinctly that the worst time to fix a problem is after it has happened. So if we're waiting for the dog to screw up and then punishing them for screwing up, we have missed a massive amount of opportunity to completely circumvent that entire process. So if we need the dog to know that X conditions are to get Y result, that's all the dog needs to know. The dog doesn't need to know that lack of Y equals punishment, because lack of Y will also just equal not being reinforced and we'll have to do it again and all this other stuff. So punishment isn't necessary for the dog to know what not to do, because what not to do is really incomplete information, right? I believe it was Jean Donaldson who said no is not a behavior. She's up, that quote is attributed to her, but I'm not sure if it's originally hers. I think it actually came from human behavior psychology. But it's originally like it's kind of taken from that element. But no is not a behavior. No does not tell your dog what should I do instead. It's incomplete information. It's stop that. Well, then what? So we don't have to say stop that if we simply say please do this.
Exactly. Case in point, my puppy.
Oh, she's so cute.
She was barking at the window, as you guys all know. And so my way of telling her what I want her to do in that situation was I put a leash on, and I'm not forcing her to lay with me because she overheats. She was laying with me for a few moments, but putting that leash on allows her to see that, all right, we're not going to the window anymore. And she can either choose to lay with me or she can lay within about 10 feet of me because she likes to lay on the cold floor. My other dog is laying 11 feet away, so she can choose which one she wants. And anywhere in between. She just can't have access to the window that she wants to bark at. Yeah. So win-win. Except now she's starting to get squirrely again because she knows I'm talking about her because somebody said she was cute.
But I mean, that's a great example of dealing with the problem at the source rather than waiting until she goes to the window and barks again and then telling her, don't do that. For dogs, they're very one-track minded. and they like very one track minded. So if their thought process is, I'm going to go bark at the window, saying don't bark at the window is not a complete sentence as far as a dog is concerned. It's then, okay, well then what should I do? You know, my little brain says I should definitely be barking at the window, and the dude who's out there who's making me bark is still out there. You know, nothing else has changed. All you've done is yell at me and tell me to knock it off, but I don't have any information on how do I get around that? What do I do next? So I tell any of my clients or anyone I work with, the first thing that I have to think of when I have a behavior I don't like it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how significant or insignificant. I don't like it when my dog sits right next to me and drools on my leg while I'm eating. Like it dog drool on, for somebody who like voluntarily hangs out in the dirt for like a week at a time, camping and backpacking, dog drool just sends me over the edge, right? Which is ironic, but I just don't like
you on
it.
that one though.
I mean, I don't care if she wants to sit there and watch me and beg, quote unquote, like she can do that. She's got to do it over there, right? So if I'm constantly just like, stop, stop, stop. Oh my God, you're so gross. You're so disgusting. What is she taking away from that scenario? Is she taking away that coming close to me and being next to me is going to be a problem? That's going to come back to bite me in the butt the next time I need to recall her away from something that perhaps is potentially harmful. You know, is that going to be a problem? Is that what she's going to take away? Is she going to take away that maybe we're just going to get into one of those like shoving matches where she's coming at me and I'm pushing her back and she's like, this is great. She's kind of a physical dog. She would probably think that was a really great way to spend an evening. You know, is she going to take away from this that I'm just going to interfere with everything? And she's like, well, screw asking, you know, and waiting for my bite. Maybe I'll just swipe it right off your plate, right? What is she going to take away from that? So instead of letting her just sit there and drool and getting into that conflict, which is going to agitate me, which is going to agitate her, which is going to agitate me, you know, and getting stuck in that cycle, I decide, I don't like it when you do this. What can I have you do instead that I will find better and will meet your need of watching me eat, waiting for your bite? Because I feed my dogs off my plate. I don't really give it. Once I'm done. Once I no longer need the fork, you can use it. And so the rule is very simple. The parameters are really simple. If you sit back a couple of feet and don't drool on my leg, I will share with you. If you don't, I will move or make it impossible for you to do so. I'll put up a baby gate. I'll go over into another room and close the door. I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll stand at the counter and eat, you know, until you can maintain that parameter. So anytime there's a behavior I don't like, it does not matter how significant or insignificant it is. The first thing I have to decide is, what would I rather you do in this moment? I don't want you to chase a squirrel. I don't want you to run after Sunday afternoon. I was up in open rangeland and we came across about 12 cows just hanging out down right where we were walking. So I had to decide immediately, okay, I don't want the dogs engaging with the cows. That's harmful for them. It's harmful for the cows. It could be dangerous, yada, 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 all kinds of things. Some of those bulls are mean. So I was like, what can I have you do? Well, I want you to recall, and now we're going to practice walking at a nice heel, you know, until we end up around the cows and we circumnavigated them cross country and all of that, you know. So it's just that we decide immediately. So I don't have to punish my dog. Does punishment work? That's the other question, right? Well, it's like, well, it worked, right? I told my dog to sit and they didn't say sit, so I popped them with the collar and now they sit. The next time I told them to sit, they did it, right? So it worked, quote unquote. Okay. From my perspective, effective is like the bare minimum standard for teaching. Like being able to memorize the answers to pass the test is really like the lowest bar I could possibly set. But what comes with punishment? Like, what is the problem with punishing them for a behavior? First of all, it implies that their behavior was personal. It implies that their behavior was somehow intentional. They misbehaved on purpose. That's a favorite. We do that to kids too, especially small kids. Young children, like, oh, well, he's just being obstinate. Like, or with dogs. So it implies that their behavior is somehow personally malicious or personally disobedient as a means of an FU, so to speak, to us, right? That's a little mean to assume from our dogs who otherwise are definitely wanting, particularly for service dogs, who are definitely otherwise willing to cooperate. So if I punish them, and then I'm also punishing the dog for my mistake. My mistake was asking you for something you couldn't do or were unwilling to do because of X, Y, and Z circumstances. I get a lot of I've had clients tell me, well, my dog won't sit when we're on the sidewalk. And I'm like, well, have you, like, have you checked to make sure that it's comfortable for them to sit on the sidewalk? I don't know about you, but on a cold, wintry day, putting my butt on the pavement doesn't sound like fun. Also, like your dog, might have hip problems or knee problems, and sitting on the cold, hard pavement is not their idea of a good time. So we're asking our dog to do something difficult, physically uncomfortable, and then we're getting mad when they don't want to comply. Punishment is, I have a graphic about it. It says punishment is an act of retaliation. This is what it is. You didn't do the thing I needed you to do, and so now I will punish you for it. Well, as a trainer, and particularly as somebody who owner trained, my own service dog and has trained other service dogs, my job is to make sure that my learner, my dog, my horse, my cat, my duck, whatever weird other species I'm working with that day, is always set up to succeed. If I give a test, if I'm a school teacher and I give a test and every kid in that class fails, whose problem is that? Whose fault is that? If every single one of those kids struggles to pass a test, what's the common denominator? It's me, the teacher. I sucked. I failed. I didn't prepare them adequately for the information that's come up. So can punishment work? Yeah. But why do you need to do that when there are other steps we can take to completely avoid it? And doesn't come with the risk of fallout. Doesn't come with the risk that my dog associates that punishment with something completely outside of my understanding. Doesn't come with the risk of the reality of, particularly when we are discussing service dogs, we need a dog who is willing to say to us, no, this is not safe. We can't do this. Your heart is going to malfunction. Your blood sugar is not where it needs to be. I cannot let you cross the street right now because there is a car coming. No, really, there's a car coming. We can't cross the street. We need a dog who can cognitively say no to a behavior. But if we use punishment as a teaching method, as a part of our learning paradigm, we take that voice away, and we have a dog who won't say, hey, no, wait, there is a car coming, or we can't do that right now because your blood sugar has tanked. And if we don't do something about it in the next minute, we're going to have a serious problem. I know you think we should go up these stairs. I don't think we should, because you're not right. You're not feeling well. Or in the case of my dog needs to be able to tell me point blank, we should not do this. You are in a bad place. We should not do this. We should go home. We should leave this particular area. We should get out of here because you're about to have a problem, because I don't always cognitively recognize when I'm starting to slide, So the myth is that punishment is necessary for a dog to learn what not to do. And the reality is if we teach the dog adequately what to do in any given circumstance, they're going to do that, working towards reinforcement, working towards engagement with you, working towards that relationship with you, rather than simply because they're trying to avoid something negative, something unpleasant. I hope that is on track. I can get
Totally.
long-winded, and I'm totally sorry. And if anybody has any questions, shut me up and ask.
Nope, totally. And that was awesome. What my dog was telling me that I hadn't picked up on was that she wanted some water. She was asking for water.
Yeah.
Filled up bowls just before I sat down, but they were empty already. And so she was asking to go out into the other part of the room because there's always water out there, but there wasn't any water out there either. So she came back in and actually indicated her bowl in her kennel, which she never voluntarily goes in her kennel without me saying, hey, Roz, go to bed. Yeah. Bed, she'll go in there, but she never goes in there otherwise. But she knew there was a bowl in there, and she knew by going in there, I would go, oh, you want water. So
yeah, well, and like I've got my little she'll throw her water dish actually when she's in her little area. She's not allowed free reign in the house because she's feral, and I've caught her trying to climb the bookcases. So she's not allowed to have any. So like she has like this nice little, takes up like a third of my living room containment area. It's like she weighs like 44 pounds, and she's in a crate meant for like a 200-pound mastiff. Because she has to have a roof. We tried it without the roof, and then she climbed that. So that was fun. But she'll just pick her bowl up if she thinks it's empty, and she'll just huck it against the wall and then look right at me like, but yeah, so I mean, and that's a great opportunity for Roz is learning that Roz has the ability to say, hey, there's a problem here, without fear that saying there's a problem here, is going to malfunction. I think a lot of the times when we see service dogs that burn out really early, it's due to a lot of heavy handedness and a lot of push when they're too young. And so these dogs are pushed, push, and any pushback that the dog gives is met with punishment. So they no longer get to push back until they have a complete meltdown. I think it was Guiding Eyes. Was it Emma Parsons? It was Emma Parsons, I think. It was Guiding Eyes for the Blind, out of California. I don't know. It's one of those. They switched about 10 plus years ago. I don't know. I'm getting old, so it's harder to remember, but to using a base, particularly early on, of all force-free positive reinforcement training. They went from having a 80%, give or take 75 to 80% washout rate for their dogs that they're breeding in-house from known bloodlines, successful bloodlines. So, I mean, basically the cream of the crop in terms of the service dog work, the top tier echelon of breeding. And they still had really high washout rates. And they went from that to it's like 20% now, just because they stopped using punishment as part of their training paradigm. And it created dogs who are much more confident, much more capable, much more adaptable, much more resilient to stressful situations. And particularly when we're discussing service dogs, we are going to have dogs in high stress situations. It's just unavoidable. We're asking a lot of them. So it's awesome. We don't have to punish. We do not need to cause pain, fear, discomfort, avoidance in our dogs to get our point across, to get the message through to them that I need you to do this, because dogs are wonderful at developing habits, and they are creatures of habit. And if we create the habit of X equals Y every single time we ask for it, they'll just do it. Like, they'll just do it. You won't even have to ask for it. At a certain point, they'll just do it because they habituate to things really, really well. So they take to it really nicely.
I think Cindy had a question.
Yeah, Cindy.
I had to unmute. I was just going to say, I think Guide Dogs for the Blind did the same thing and got the same results, where it went from really terrible rates to really, it's like 80% success rate, which is incredible. And, I've seen some of their dogs work in person when they're training them, and it's amazing to see them work.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's incredible. And like, things that we know about, like resiliency and stress and things like that, the dogs who are raised in a force-free way, who are trained initially in a force-free way, even when they mess up, it doesn't have the same psychological effect. They just go, well, I'll just try that again. I don't care. I'll do it 800 times. And we see that in other working dog environments. I think one of the, among many problems that there are with the like police dogs and things like that, is that we are putting dogs into high stress situations that are physically and mentally quite challenging. And then on top of that, when they screw up, we're punishing them for it. And it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress that boils over into these dogs who become somewhat unpredictable. Humans will do the same thing in high pressure, high stress environments. When they're raised that way, they become anxious, anxiety-ridden adults who have wild, rapid mood swings and do well until they don't. And, unfortunately, we don't need anybody having a meltdown when someone else's life is on the line.
Unfortunately, I've only met or been involved with 2 puppies, like from puppy stage all the way to service dog work, that were trained force-free.
Yeah.
Like, I have several more in the making, but only 2 that have started as puppies and gone all the way. They're the most confident dogs I've ever seen. Like, I've seen a lot of dogs trained force-free, but go to the service dog level, there's only been the 2. And with all that they've learned because of their service dog work, and then all that they've learned just because of the force-free training, that's just like, if you could put a scale of confidence, if you said the scale was 1 to 0 or 1 to 10, these dogs would be at like a 20 still. If you said the scale was 1 to 100, these dogs would be at least 150, if not a 200. Just
Yeah.
charts confident. And that's because their whole lives have been about them being able to make decisions, choices. And if they get it wrong, well, let's try something else. It's not a, oh, gee, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
And it makes the world of a difference. Let's go to Elliot for a question.
Yeah.
Back to Cindy.
I was kind of just mostly going to agree with you, Penny, because I mean, Zappo came to me. He'd been rehomed twice. I have no idea what his background truly was before he came to me, other than he was obviously used in a breeding program that was a relatively high quality breeding program, but still, it was a big program. He came to me too scared to drink water. And I mean, now he's a successful, confident service dog of a very off breed by most people's service dog considerations. For Pine's information, Zappo's a Sholo. So he's
yeah, that is
considered
off breed.
Yes. But he came literally would not drink water, and now he does public access and tasks and is wonderful and confident and bossy and sassy. And all of that came because of force-free training and just letting him move at his own pace.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a big push, and it's particularly with service dogs. There's a lot of push to just get all the training done, right? Do all the public access right now, right this minute. I have to get my 4-month-old puppy out to the mall and get them exposed to all kinds of stuff. And it's hinky because it's a lot of pressure, and hinky because we're talking about dogs that do not have anywhere near the level of house training and confidence to be out in those kind of high pressure environments. And almost invariably, those are the dogs you see wash. They hit 18 months to 2 years and suddenly they're reactive and all that. But yeah, force-free training builds confident dogs. And I've met several who are trained that way, or and just in general. And so we take the base personality for a dog that does well as a service dog, which typically is a dog who is a bit more confident, a bit more outgoing. One of the things that I look for when I'm looking for a service dog candidate is I look for a dog that recovers quickly. So when they get freaked out by something, they have a quick recovery time. They bounce back from that. I mean, I don't expect a dog to never be scared. I just need to know that they can be scared and then recover and move forward. And then you train them force-free, which is basically the doggy equivalent of telling them they're awesome. Everything they do is amazing. You're so incredible. And it builds a very, very confident dog who, can go out and confidently engage in the public and not be overwhelmed by it. My current service dog is probably he genuinely believes he's God's gift to humanity. When we started public access training at like Target, he would like wave to the mannequins, he'd walk by and he'd be like, hello, just like, check me out. Aren't I awesome? He's one of the most confident dogs I've ever met in my life. And it's just astounding. And he's off breed. I'm trying to get, the sun is at just the right angle. He's off breed. He's an English Shepherd. So you don't see a whole lot of them, he's a herding dog. So yeah, he's great. Wow. That's really
difference there.
Yeah.
You're on Mars or something.
I know. It's the sun. It's just the evening sun hits at just the right angle. So I'm going to really quickly mute my microphone, and I'm going to see if I can close that.
And we'll see what Cindy's question is.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that with working with Julie's dog Earl and with Nick, that I can see that using the force-free training has increased both their confidences. And it's not that Earl's shy but he's got the poodle skittishness, and Nick was just flat out timid when I got him. And now he's definitely not timid. He's overconfident. And it's from the way I've trained him. And same with Earl. Earl's only a year, and so he's getting more confident with Julie's help and helping him get exposed to things properly. And so even though he's bouncy, definitely gained a lot of confidence. And I'm convinced it's the force-free training.
It definitely has a huge impact on the dog's ability to even have that, higher, I don't want to say higher cognitive thinking as far as like people in making decisions. Because, they don't think quite the same way we do. It's not to that level, but dogs that are trained with force-free think about what they're doing more so than I think dogs that are trained punitively, because they have made choices. We give them more choices in their day and teach them the choices that we prefer. So therefore, they think about their actions a little bit more versus that dog that is always told, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but never really told what to do. And I think that makes a huge difference in what they're willing to offer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I work with a rescue quite closely, and I handle some pretty intense, and if anybody was following any of my Instagram and stuff, I was talking a lot about my latest foster, Billy, who is a severely abused beagle, and force-free training took a dog who was so shut down to a dog who could, who was bordering on becoming, more confident and more comfortable and more resilient. And it's just, and it does the same thing with humans. If you work with children who have been traumatized or gone through traumatic stuff, therapists don't sit out there and recommend, punish them every time they screw up, like, we know that from humans. We know that, like, it used to be, when my parents were growing up, if you got the answer wrong, the teacher whack you with the ruler, right? Well, we figured out relatively, pretty sufficiently. And now if a teacher smacked a kid with a ruler, oh, hell would break loose. But we figured it out that really wasn't the best way to encourage kids to engage and interact. And, it wasn't a good way to get kids who wanted to learn the material. It was a really good way to get kids who memorized the right answers, though. Elliot, did you have another question? Saw your hand come up.
Not really a question, but kind of a statement of like, if you just tell me something is wrong 100 times, I don't learn anything except that was wrong. But if you just show me how to get to the answer, then you've actually taught me what I'm supposed to do. Like, making errors doesn't teach me the same way if you just would teach me the answer to begin with.
Exactly.
Like, that's just it, plain and simple. And like, when I was new, starting with Zappo, one of the things I saw and was trying kind of, because it made sense, was the idea of like a no reward marker, just to be like, hey, that's not quite right, let's try something else. But even for some dogs, like, that's a punishment. And for him, it would shut him down, because he's like, okay, well, I won't try anything then, because it's not right, so just tell me what to do that's right.
Yeah.
And so being very conscientious and learning, okay, so let's cut out, any sort of, no, that's not quite right, and just work towards what's right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's good, valuable feedback. So when we're working with another living being and we're teaching a learner of any species, regardless, everything they do is data. Everything they do is information for us, right? So if we ask for sit and the dog doesn't do it, that's really valuable information, right? What can we take away from that? I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make in dog training is assuming that the labor is entirely on our dog. It's on the learner to learn. No, it's on us to teach. That's where the division of labor is. It should be, the learner should not have to feel like they're working, right? They will be, because their brain's going to be processing information, but they shouldn't feel that way. They should not be consciously aware that they're learning, if we're doing it right, if we're being really clever. We, on the other hand, have the burden of proof, so to speak. We have the burden of the labor. And if we're asking for things and our dog is consistently making the wrong decision, that's really valuable data. It's not the dog is wrong data. The learner's never wrong. Their answer is always correct. They're always going to give you the answer that they think is the answer that is correct, based on what they need, what they want, how they're feeling, where they're in their process of their emotions, etc. It's really valuable data to us that the answer was wrong. So what did we do that did not elicit the correct response? And no reward markers for some dogs are totally fine. I find that I will use them for dogs who are crossing over. So if I'm working with an adult dog or an older dog who has started in a more aversive manner with a more, quote unquote, I hate the term balance training. I like to say compulsion reliant or punishment dependent training method, a lot of those dogs will become exceedingly stressed out by a lack of response from me. So if I ask and they give me the wrong answer and I don't immediately provide a clarification of like, yes or no, you did it correct, that can become very, very stressful. And certain types of dogs can react really negatively. And, they can even get aggressive, they can become impatient, they get frustrated, those kind of behaviors start to appear, or they disengage completely from learning. So a no reward marker can be very helpful for dogs in that scenario because they're used to getting feedback. And with that lack of, just completely removing half of their feedback can become extremely stressful. So I will use a no reward marker with those dogs.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
My German Shepherd Cam was that way.
Yeah.
When we rescued him, he was filled with anxiety and all kinds of problems. Most of the people here kind of know his story. But he would just opt out and walk away if I didn't provide him feedback of some sorts. So I was able to condition a simple nope as a try again. Yeah. And I still do that quite regularly, even with my force-free dog, because it's not a stop doing that. It's not a, it's a really nope. And sometimes it'll be a nope, try again.
Yeah. I use like mistakes in my house, like, mistake. It just means that wasn't the correct answer. Let's try again. I have a general rule that if I have a dog if I have asked 3 times and gotten the wrong answer 3 times, the problem is it's not the dog. Yeah, like something has got to change. Whether it's me, whether it's the environment, whether it's how I'm asking, whether, like there's that data is really good information for me to understand that something needs to change. But yeah, so for some dogs that lack of feedback, particularly if they are used to the answer being either good or bad, like you either get a reward or you get punished, that no reward marker can really be beneficial to that. But for other dogs, it can be incredibly stressful. It's particularly if they come from an environment where any sort of thing like that was met with very heavy-handed correction. What even the other side of the spectrum, the non-scientific side would say is borderline abuse. For a lot of dogs who have suffered a lot, a no reward marker can be really punishing because they expect it to be met with, now I get a pop from a prong collar, now I get electrocuted, now I get yelled at. It's not just you've made a mistake, no reward, let's go moving on. It's you've made a mistake, now there's punishment coming. And so for some dogs that can be, I see that a lot with dogs who actually have had who've had shock collars used, the beeping from the shock collar. That beep is incredibly, and it's, otherwise completely benign information, right? It's just a sound. It's a beep. It should not be that panic inducing, but for dogs who have had shock collars used, that beep is a predictor for escalation. Next step is escalation, and it can be very aversive. And that's one thing that they don't like to talk about is they're like, all I have to do is beep him. I'm like, yes, because he thinks the next thing you're planning on doing is electrocuting him. So the beep itself is, yes, totally benign, but now it is not. You've conditioned it to be, negative. And humans do that too, like you eat something that disagrees with you and you become you get food poisoning and you just never can touch it again, right? You eat a bad sandwich and that particular combination of foods you will never touch again in your life. And it isn't the fault of all tuna fish in the universe that you got food poisoning from that one questionable sandwich decision at the gas station. But now every time you look at tuna fish, that's where your brain goes. And so you just like, absolutely, I will not touch it ever again.
Let's kind of shift gears a little bit to look at another common myth. And this one we hear from a lot of other trainers that don't understand force-free training. And that is the myth that force-free training is permissive or that there's no boundaries with force-free training. And so I know this is a huge one for me this month in particular, because I'm doing a whole workshop based on this.
Yeah.
Based on this. It's all about setting boundaries and teaching people, you know, how to set boundaries and then how to train them in a force-free way. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and how, you know, maybe some examples of boundaries that are important for your lifestyle and how you taught them?
So I do not. Okay. So I hear that a lot. Force-free training is permissive. You just allow the dog to do whatever. I do not. I am not permissive. I am a micromanager. I am incredibly manipulative. I am Machiavelli with a clicker. Straight up. I am Machiavelli with a clicker. I manage my situation and I make all my little antecedent arrangements so that the dog basically has minimal option except to give the correct answer, right? Because every other option is not going to provide the thing that they want most, whatever that is in that moment. So that, yeah, force-free is permissive. All you do is ignore bad behavior. No, we take bad. I don't like assigning a moral compass to dog behavior because dogs are amoral. They just do whatever is most reinforcing or whatever they assume is going to get them whatever it is that they need out of an environment. So bad behavior is not, you know, it's not, I'm not going to just ignore it and pretend it's going to go away. I'm going to take that information, that data, that feedback and go, okay, I have to fix that. I need you to do something different when we see X on the trail. Like I spend a lot of time hiking. I'm out in the wilderness all the time. So let's take the cows, for example. I need you to not immediately see the cows and be like, hell yeah, let's chase that. Let's engage with that. I need a different response. So the presence of cows is a cue for my dogs to check in with me. They hear a moo, I check in with me. You know, and things like that. The presence of other people on the trail is a cue for my dog to stop and check in with me. Whether or not I'm going to allow you to approach that person is going to depend on what that other dog is doing or what that person is doing. You know, when I see somebody up on the trail go, oh, dog, I'll probably let my dog go approach them because they're social and they like it. And the human is clearly indicating they would like to see this dog as well. And what a win-win for everybody. But first, check in with me, you know, and things like that. It's not permissive at all. It's just understanding that I'm not reacting to an environment. Like I said earlier, punishment is an act of retaliation. I am not waiting for things to devolve before I get out ahead of it. I don't buy flood insurance after my house is flooded. I don't have car insurance for after I get into a fender bender. The car insurance preventatively. I don't vaccinate my dogs against illness after they've gotten parvo, you know, or lepto. Lepto's the big one. Everybody's in debate. Like, oh, you don't over vaccinate your dog. Like my dogs drink out of scary mud puddles, and they splash around and they play in it. I'm vaccinating for lepto because it's an actual significant risk where I live. You know, I don't wait till the fleas and ticks have already infested the dog to give them some sort of preventative measure to keep those things off of them. I'm not going to be reacting. Force-free training is not reactive. We don't wait for the problem to appear and then try to fix it. We stay out ahead of them because we understand our dogs, right? We understand dogs in general. We understand that chasing cats is kind of like a dog thing, right? Chasing squirrels is a dog thing. So I'm not going to take my dog to a park full of squirrels and turn him loose and be like, oh, well, he's chasing squirrels. I can't let him do that. Like, no, don't die. He's a dog. Of course he's chasing squirrels, and squirrels are jerks. They mock them and you will never be able to convince me they don't. I've got one that sits on my fence and looks right at my dogs like, you
like
know,
the one in the woodshed.
yeah. Like,
and I mean, we've done a lot of relaxation and you just being calm in parks and places away from home so that Azul doesn't have that desire to chase, you know, watching and whatnot. So if he knows simply if he's on leash, we're not chasing him. We might watch, we might walk away, you know, whatever, but he's on leash, he's not chasing him. And in the backyard, he can chase that little bugger all he wants to.
Knock yourself out.
Willing to stand just out of his reach in the tree and flap his tail, he's purposely taunting him.
Yeah. Well, and the squirrels in there's like a whole buffet between my neighbor's fruit trees, my chicken coop, And my other neighbor's walnut trees, like the squirrels just have like themselves like a field day and they just love to be out there. And I'm just like, y'all are stealing my chicken food. Like dogs can chase you. But yeah, so with force retraining, we are not permissive. We are preventative. We stay out ahead of the problems before we arrive. We don't react to a situation. I don't put my seatbelt on, after I'm in the wreck, right? The seatbelt comes on as a preventative measure, right? I use my turn signal to indicate I'm turning so that other cars know I'm turning instead of me just whipping around to the side and everybody else in the road going like, what the hell? So that's the biggest, I would say that's the biggest reason the force retraining works so well